And right now, Palestine is what is critical, but it is all part of this global system of oppression. And for the most part, it's class-based in terms of like, coming together to get out of it. It's class-based globally. I mean, that's how I see it.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think Palestine really is the litmus tests. It exposes so many people. And, ultimately, if you look at Palestine, if you're opposed to what's going on there, it really exposes you to so many of these things. Like me being critical of capitalism at an early age, of colonization, of all these things, is because I grew up as a Palestinian and I was already deeply aware of all of these things, and it just points you in the right direction. And that's not to say it's the most important or the only cause or the only genocide. We know that there's suffering happening everywhere, but who's selling those weapons to other countries, to other dictatorships that are taking that out on their people? Who's selling the spyware? Who's developing the spyware? Literally, Gaza is a lab, right? The people of Gaza have been treated as lab rats, as lab mice by Israel in order to expand their weapons and intelligence technology and create these systems of oppression that they export all around the globe. At the end of the day, these borders, they only apply to us. They don't apply to the elite. They get to do whatever they want. Epstein had how many passports, how many fake identities that he can, that he was able to use, to blackmail and do whatever else he was, with all of these global elites, while their people, continue to suffer.
Yeah.
I want to ask you, as a Palestinian American who's from New York, and obviously we know what your childhood was like following 9/11. It was probably very dire. Do you see a difference in terms of the average American's attitude, not just towards Israel, but towards Muslims in general, has shifted in the last 20 plus years? Do you feel a difference, a change is in the air, comparatively speaking, since then?
I mean, I was in second grade when 9/11 happened, and I actually went to an Islamic school in Brooklyn, a full-time Islamic school, not just like a weekend situation, but,
like day school, like you went to Islamic day school.
Exactly, in Brooklyn. So, I got the benefits of being around like-minded people where I didn't face that discrimination so directly in a daily sense, but I did see it in that, I knew so many Muslim women who were afraid to wear hijab, had to take their hijab off following 9/11. People were putting up, American flags outside of their homes to kind of signal, that they're against this, even though, they had nothing to do with it. And so, we grew up as a part of a generation where people were targeted for wearing hijabs. We were called terrorists in the streets sometimes. I did go to public school for a little bit in New York as well. So, I experienced that directly, where in history class, students and even the teacher would just like straight up say, yes, the reason we went to Iraq was like because they hated us for our freedom. And that's why these things happen and we have to fight back. And I'm like, this is literally ahistorical. The teacher would contradict me when I said like the US killed 1 million people in Iraq, even though this was like an objective fact. And I graduated high school in 2012, but like they were literally still teaching us race science here in New York, believe it or not.
You gotta understand, we had to fight back, and it was necessary. So I told him we're gonna get that freedom, and we're gonna bring it to him.
I think that I felt from 9/11 up until I would say October 23 that there was marked improvements in the Islam hate. Okay, at least outward, as apparent Islamahate. I do think that it did sort of like wane after the 9/11, but I actually think it's now coming back, and it's coming back with a vengeance. But we're seeing a situation where the same people are simultaneously fueling legitimate Jew hate and Islamahate at the same time because of what they're doing. The same people are prompting hate against both those people.
Yeah, and I agree with you. That's true. But also even prior to October 7, if you look at who proliferated Islamophobic hate in the US, a lot of it was coming from Zionist organizations to begin with, because they know that that helps their cause. So now they're going into overdrive. So I do feel it got a little bit better prior to October 7 because it became more sophisticated. And, it's like a pendulum. We know how this goes. Like, things were getting more woke, and, people were like becoming more broadly accepting of Muslims. But because I was a Palestinian and I wore my kufiya, right? Like, you wear a kufiya, you'll get hate crimed, or you'll get attacked, or you'll get, just all these things hurled at you for being a Muslim because you're wearing a kufiya. But if you just wore the hijab without that, you may not face that so directly. So I think, like, again, Palestine kind of brings out these hidden things that they try to hide behind, that they try to act like, we've grown past Islamophobia, we've grown past racism and all these things. But if you have the wrong political opinion, then all hell breaks loose.
Right. They're not hating you because you're Muslim. They hate you because you're Palestinian. Make sure you understand the difference between those two things.
Can you explain what within our lifetime's mission is? And do you see a situation where having Zohran in the mayor's mansion could potentially have some benefit? I know everyone wants to believe that we can make change through electoral politics. And while I do believe elections matter, that's not where the change is going to come from. The change is going to come from the streets. Now, the question is, does this turn into a sort of FDR/Nixon type situation where it's like, hey, look, I'd like to not have to do this, but you see all those people out there, they're demanding change, and we're going to have to do something. So what is the sort of the baseline of your organization, what you're hoping to accomplish, and do you see Zohran facilitating any bit of that agenda?
I mean, this is a perfect segue of everything we were just talking about, because concept of within our lifetime, even through its name, is that, we want to achieve Palestinian liberation, not in some distant future, but as something that, we're working towards today. Because growing up in the Palestinian Muslim community in New York, we always knew, like, freedom of Palestine is inevitable, but we act like it's not possible in our lifetime. It's going to happen several generations from now. And that's something that, we wanted to change, particularly growing up in a post 9/11 US where, as AP reports exposed that the NYPD was spying on Muslims for decades. People were disappeared off of the streets of New York City and thrown in Guantanamo without even being given a fair trial, and all of these things. There was a stigma about talking about politics, talking about political opinions, and particularly Palestine, because even prior to 9/11, saying that you were Palestinian in the US in some spaces, especially in New York, is like saying you were a terrorist, essentially.
Yes. Where I live, I'm in South Florida. You might as well just say
exactly.
You might as well be ISIS.
Exactly. I mean, even prior to people projecting that on all Arabs and all Muslims, it was hyper projected, onto Palestinians. And so, I remember being in college, and the Muslim student associations would literally have signs up that say, like, you're not allowed to talk about politics. And that's because they were literally afraid of surveillance, because reports came out that they were being surveilled, that the NYPD were joining these student organizations, infiltrating these student organizations, and, trying to entrap people and things like that. And so, I didn't think that the Palestinian cause was something that we needed to be so secretive about. The less that we talk about these things, the less that we educate our community, the more ripe they become to things like entrapment, and, really isolating the Palestinian struggle into something, that is this like terrible secret, when in reality, I mean, you take any anti-colonial class in college, even human rights. I majored in, human rights and international law. It felt like, hey, a lot of these things, you could apply it to our side, and you can absolutely make a case for the liberation of the Palestinian people, and not within even like a two-state paradigm, but, a full liberated Palestine from the river to the sea. And yeah, I mean, Zionists try to use this as a gotcha against us. Yes, when I say river to the sea, I mean all of Palestine is Palestinian land. Christians, Jews, and Muslims could live there, as they did prior to the state of Israel being created in 1948. There was peace. What changed? State of Israel being created has no right to exist. So, I stand by all of that. And so we wanted to revitalize that revolutionary spirit of Palestinians living in exile, to be able to talk about our struggle once again, because when I really came out in our community, people couldn't believe, the things that I was saying. These were all conversations that we were having, at our homes, on dinner tables, things like that. But people just didn't feel comfortable saying them out loud. But, this new generation, we didn't have these accents that people could easily demonize us with. We had our education, we had international law to cite, and all of these different things to make us be able to come out and speak about Palestine without being afraid of what they were going to malign us with. What's the worst you can call me? The big bad T word. You guys were calling us that for no reason when we were children. You made us immune to it. So, I mean, that was the whole point of it. And I do think with Zohran Mamdani situation, it's really kind of like a pick your opponent, right? And I definitely think he's a much better opponent to have than Cuomo, who I also organized against when he was governor, and Eric Adams and every other option we have. But I think the opponent part is still there. Whoever is controlling the NYPD, whoever's appeasing Zionists, right? He's not necessarily an ally of the Palestinian movement in that way. He's the mayor of New York City. And in order to gain any concessions from him, we have to keep the pressure up, right? If only Zionists keep the pressure up, he's only going to concede to one side. So, we've been seeing, unfortunately, a lot of people who want to shield him from any criticism or any accountability, rather than understand that our role as a movement is to continue to pressure him. And that's why within our lifetime, put together a statement signed by over 100 different community organizations, including multiple DSA, which he hails from, DSA chapters and caucuses, to demand him to drop the Zionist billionaire heiress, Tish, as police commissioner. I mean, that's one of the most consequential things that he can do as mayor. They say a lot of things are out of his hands. It's up to Albany. I don't know if he can do free buses or childcare. That's up to Albany, right? But that's his prerogative to completely choose his own police commissioner, something that every single administration has done. It's not expected to keep on, a previous police commissioner. And so even if they forced his hand when it comes to this, we also have to show that there's like a group of people, that there are thousands of people, majority of New Yorkers calling for Tish to be removed. And we're not the only ones. I mean, the other day, a union of over 3,500 public defenders, legal workers, the ALAA, they also put out their own statement in addition to signing ours, demanding that he drop the Zionist police commissioner Tish. I mean, her brother literally said that Zohran Mamdani was an enemy of the Jews, and this was after he put her up as police commissioner. So they're telling us, and they're telling him how they feel about him every day. The least we can do is kind of return that favor and make her, she would call us anti-Semitic for wearing these. She said that keffiyehs were anti-Semitic, that watermelons were an anti-Semitic symbol. And, it's not like she's even somebody who's widely loved by the NYPD. She was never a beat cop. She was an intelligence, person within the NYPD that developed a lot of the spying on Muslims that I was referencing, earlier in the conversation. So, I mean, the only people that she is there to serve is Zionists and the ruling class, the very people that, within the primary he ran against and won him that primary. And so, we have to keep the pressure on him with things like Jessica Tish, with things like, dismantling the Cornell Technion partnership, which literally develops weapons for Israel, that he kind of, walked back on. So, we're already seeing concessions here and there, as we see with all of these electoral strategies, where they say it's like 50D chess to given to Zionists for some reason during a genocide, when if anything, this is the best time now, while the iron is hot, to strike and demand as much of a sidestep, or as much of a severing of ties with Zionism, and that old order of politics that people are just sick and tired of, that took a genocide for many people to see and speak out about.